Hello and welcome to the Week 7 edition of the Lines Megapod. Matt Brown, Steven Andress, Adam Candee coming to you. We're going to go through each and every game, give you bets that are in our accounts if we have any leans one way or another. And you know what? If we're passing on a game, we'll let you know why we're passing on the game as well. Player props and everything in between. Kick things off here. Detroit Lions and the Baltimore Ravens. And with this game, we're sitting a cheap 3 right now in favor of the Ravens. 43 to 43.5 is your total. Guys, I just got back from being down in Arizona. One of the great things about being in Arizona is you can bet on your computer. You can have a sportsbook open. When a line pops up, you can utilize that line, and I actually got an expensive 3.5 on the Lions. So I got on the other side of a hook, paid some juice, but it only lasted about 90 seconds, and then it got bought back and then popped again a little bit later, but it didn't last long again, and then we haven't seen anything close to that. At the number 3 right now, Adam, it looks like we're probably heading to 2.5 on this thing. It looks as if the Lions money is finally starting to come in. I went with I would still play the 3. Let me just say this. I wouldn't need the hook. I just jumped on it because it was there. I would still play it at 3 with the Lions. When you dig into this game, one of the things that really has shocked me about this Lions team is just how good this defense has played. You go ahead and you start to whittle out the garbage time stuff. You start to whittle out the, factored for opponent and all that. And on its baseline, you have a top 10 defense in the NFL. Now, will that continue on for the rest of the season? I don't know, but I don't really care because I want to bet this Week 7 game right now, and this Lions defense is playing very, very, very good. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of getting points with a Lions team that I don't feel I'm truly ever out of the game with. A backdoor's always open for how good they play on the offensive side of the ball as well.
I'm going to make it really simple from my end, and I'll leave the rest to you guys. Right now, if you're looking at a 3-point spread between Detroit and Baltimore, let's say you use 1 or 1.5 for your home field adjustment. Do you have a 1.5 or 2 points between these two teams on a neutral field? If you do, then good for you. I don't. Mm-hmm. I have these teams flat even on a neutral. And so if one team is favored by 3 and you have them rated together and you don't have a significant adjustment to make to either team for weather, for what? For quarterback? No. There's no significant injury adjustment. Yeah, there could be some wind, and that could be something that we factor in, but I think that's something you factor in more than the total than you do on the side. So I think the Lions are going to be able to run the ball no matter who is the running back. We know it's not going to be David Montgomery, but we know that Jahmyr Gibbs is trending toward being in, so we know that they at least have someone to run the football. And for Baltimore, if it's a home spot for Baltimore, it's a home spot coming off having the travel of London involved as well. So I think take whatever adjustment you would make for the weather if you think that the Lions need to be able to throw the ball. I don't. I think they can run too. And then even that adjustment out with Baltimore coming off a rough travel spot, in the end, take the points with the team that you think is better between the two that are rated right next to each other for me.
Yeah, Steven, look, we talked about how we thought this Lions offense could be explosive in the heading into this season. What we didn't think was that this defense was going to be as good as they have been. We thought, hey, look, they played better towards the end of last season, so we thought, okay, maybe take a step forward. They go from being, let's call it 20th to maybe 17th, 16th. Maybe they're league average. I did not expect top 10. I don't know if it's going to last, but they're playing that way right now. They're defending pretty much at every level. And with that, I mean, this Ravens team has just not been able to figure it out once they get inside the 20s. Between the 20s, they've been all right, but they hadn't been able to get in the end zone. And I think the Lions are going to go ahead and continue to kind of frustrate them from that angle as well. I really do like this angle, getting the points with a team that, like I said, always can run down from the back door with how good they are on offense.
So early in the week, I teased this up to 8.5, thinking we weren't going to get the 3. I was pretty surprised that we got the 3, and it looks like we might wind up back at 2.5 near close anyway, based on what we're seeing here on Friday. And just to bully the 2 points that you guys made, Matt, I checked our power rankings. You and I agree. We both have Detroit rated higher than the Ravens on a neutral field this week. If you talk about the Lions defense and the fact that they are number 1 in the league in terms of defensive EPA and success rate, if you filter out 10% garbage time on both sides, I think that's a product of them being able to get pressure at a top 5 rate in the league while not blitzing all that much. And on the flip side, the Ravens have one of the worst pressure rates in the league. In fact, they have a pressure rate 9% lower than their blitz rate, which is a bad combination. Despite that, their EPA and success rate numbers are still pretty solid. So you usually don't see that. I think that's a direct reflection of the quarterbacks that they faced. And this is the best offense that they will face at this point. So I use the teaser leg, but I also use Detroit in a money line parlay. Every week I just like to throw in like a lunch money lottery ticket money line parlay. And I think the Lions are very live in this game to win.
Yeah, I also played them in a non-traditional teaser. It had already moved to 3 whenever I played it, and so I wanted to get somebody in there with the Seahawks, and so I took the Lions up to 9. So I do also have them in a teaser this week as well. Atlanta Falcons and Tampa Bay Bucks. This is 2.5 in favor of the Bucks at home. It is a 37 total. Steven, in prior years, I would blindly tease the Falcons. It would be a game with a 37 total. I would blindly tease them up to 8.5, and I would just roll with it, hold my nose, move on. I haven't done it yet. I have to get over some of these biases I have against this Falcons offense and against Desmond Ridder because, let's be for real, the Bucks, it's been a fine story, and certainly Baker Mayfield's been but I think it's one of those deals where we almost have an inflated view of what Baker Mayfield has done this season because we just expect him to be garbage. We just have this mindset that Baker Mayfield is garbage, and when he plays like league average or even close to league average, we're kind of like, oh, look how well Baker Mayfield's playing. Isn't that amazing? I think I'm probably going to end up having to find a dance partner here with the Falcons. 8.5 in a game of the 37 total in which the Bucks offense is just not really all that explosive. Like, they can move the ball, but it's not like, you're super worried about them blowing anybody out or anything. So tell me why I haven't put it in there, and what do you think about this one?
You probably haven't put it in there because Desmond Ritter's the quarterback.
Yeah.
We saw last week that it was pretty volatile in the second half, and that can happen any given week. Nevertheless, Falcons still covered a theoretical teaser leg last week. So I do have it in the account. I paired it up with Buffalo. And I think if Tampa Bay and their offense were to stop being as stubborn as they are running the ball and doing it very inefficiently, if they were to pass it more, well, I think the Falcons defense matches up pretty good with this passing attack. They are number 7 in pass D success rate. They are much better in terms of talent than what we've seen in recent years with the Falcons defense. So I think it's a pretty decent matchup there. And I think just with the way that Arthur Smith, we know, likes to play games, slow, methodical, not a very fast pace. I mean, I've given you a little analysis, but to go back to what you initially said, it's a traditional Wong teaser with a total of 37. So pretty high success rate traditionally with that.
Yeah, Adam, I mean, I kind of did a little bit of teaser research just over the last few weeks. And since we've gotten all these ridiculously low totals in these games, like, I should have just been blindly playing. Like, teasers would have been crushing. Like, if you would have just backed off and threw your analysis out the window because we hate a quarterback or this, that, and the other, whatever. Like, if you would have just played all of these 40 and sub 40 totals and just played the teaser leg, it ridiculously was hitting like 80% or something. So we should have been doing that. I don't know if I keep riding it here. What say you?
All right. So not a weather game, right? Mm-hmm. Two teams that I think we probably all have rated fairly close to each other. All right. I have been the one advocating for plus 7.5, plus 8.5 Wong teasers all year. And this ain't the spot for me. I'm going to pass on this one. I'm going to pass on the game entirely, but I want to give you some Desmond Ridder stats that should probably make anybody who's thinking about Atlanta want to live bet this game as opposed to betting it pregame. So let's talk a little bit about what has happened with Desmond Ridder depending on what the game plan has looked like, okay? So for Desmond Ridder this year, in 6 starts, he has 3 starts in which the average depth of target is 8 yards or less, right? The conservative Desmond Ridder, the Desmond Ridder that Arthur Smith is not asking to do a whole lot. And in those starts, I'm just going to go by big-time throws and turnover-worthy plays because there's a stat in here that's really going to scare the hell out of you if you're an Atlanta backer. In the low A-dot starts, Desmond Ridder has been respectable. Okay, 3 big-time throws and 3 turnover-worthy plays. Okay, you don't ask a lot, you don't get a lot. That's fine. But whether it's been game state or whether it's been game plan, there have been 3 games this year, including last week, when Desmond Ridder was asked to do more. And the game that everyone wants to point to about how well he's doing was 2 weeks ago. It was not one of the high A-dot games. In the games in which he has had an average depth of target of 9 yards or more. So basically, for everybody saying, you have all these weapons, you have Drake London, you have Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson, why aren't you throwing the ball down the field? My friend, here's why you're not throwing the ball down the field. Because in those 3 starts, Desmond Ridder has 11 turnover-worthy plays, and he has 2 big-time throws. If this ends up being a game in which the Atlanta Falcons have to throw the ball, they are not going to be able to chase effectively. And that's what gives me pause about playing teaser here, because Tampa didn't look great last week. I'll absolutely give you that. But if you want to go with what Matt talked about and the fact that this Detroit defense has been a lot better than we expected, and the fact that Baker Mayfield has been okay, not great, but he's been okay by the PFF numbers this year, a total of 37. I could see us getting to, 30 points on a 20-10, on a 23-13. I think it's possible for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to get there, and we've already seen one of these games this year with Tampa against the Saints, in which they had an injured, struggling Derek Carr, and they were able to win that pretty handily. So I'll stay away from it entirely just because those Ridder numbers scare the hell out of me.
Washington Commanders and the New York Football Giants. It is going to be Tyrod Taylor under center for the Giants, it seems. I know Daniel Jones listed as officially questionable, but all signs seem to point that he's going to need a week to get it going. They did get back Saquon Barkley last week, and this has now moved either expensive 2.5 or a full 3 on the Washington Commanders, a total another of 37.5 out there. Adam, we could go right back to the well again. Hey, super low total. Get it up to 8.5. Do we go that route? What do you see here from the Giants? I mean, at this point, I don't know if it really matters who plays quarterback. If it is Daniel Jones, if it is Tyrod Taylor, the offensive line being the kind of the wreck that it is right now, I don't know if it really changes my perception of the team all that much. I think at this scenario, we're just kind of like looking and saying, okay, the Giants have played one of the most difficult schedules in all of the NFL to start the season. Washington, on the other hand, has played one of the softest schedules of the entire NFL to start the season. And so these teams are probably about equal. It's just we think maybe a little bit better of the Commanders. So I don't know, man. I think it's an interesting teaser leg from the Giants side when it's all said and done. But maybe that ends up being the Giants and Falcons in my account. But again, not in there yet.
This is also a pass for me, despite the fact that it fits all of those Wong criteria that we like so much. I have one fantasy league in which I play with a number of my old college buddies. And the name of the team used to be Turn and Coughlin. Makes sense, right? I named the team this year Day Bowling for Dollars because I really felt like I'm in on the big fat man. Like he's our guy. He got our team to overperform last year. We played really well. And I changed the name of the team 2 weeks ago to I Fear for Daniel Jones' Life because I do fear for Daniel Jones' life. His neck got bent back once again last week. This offensive line is one of the worst you will ever see on any NFL field. And they're going to be down multiple starters again. Andrew Thomas is not going to play. John Michael Schmitz is not going to play. Even Shane Lemieux, who was backing up and was the number 2 center, is not going to play. So it is going to be not only the worst of the Giants' offensive line, but then some backups to go with them as well. They're making signings off other teams' practice squads to fill it out. I don't know that you can find exactly where the bottom might be for this Giants team on the offensive side of the ball. Do not be fooled by what you saw last week out of the New York Giants. I think that had a lot more to do with the fact that there's some signal in whatever's wrong with Buffalo right now than it does with how the Giants played overall in that game. So if you go and filter out garbage time, and I do even a little more aggressively than Steven was talking about, 20% to 80%, the Washington offense is actually upper half of the league. And Sam Howell is actually number 12 out of 25 starting quarterbacks. Now, a lot of that EPA is on big plays, right?
Yeah.
About Sam Howell getting some big gainers. This is a Giants defense that will give up those explosive plays. It's entirely possible. So hard lean to the 2.5, laying it with Washington if you can get there.
Yeah, I actually think if I played this straight up, I have no problem 2.5. I have no problem 3. I actually probably have no problem even playing some alts on Washington, because it kind of feels like one of those games where it's like, if it's going to go Washington's way, like you said, Adam, it's probably because Howell's playing a pretty decent game. The defense, just even though they haven't been great so far this year, is being able to limit a very, very limited offensive line and can't protect whoever in the hell ends up playing quarterback. And, is this a 10-point game? I think very easily it could be a 10-point game. So I think if I went that direction or end up ultimately going that direction, I might sprinkle in some alts as well, because I'm not really afraid of it then at that point staying close, because the handicap is the offensive line is not going to be able to handle what Washington brings to the table. The offense has actually been fairly decent whenever you factor out some of the garbage time stuff. So in theory, then at that point, I think we could be getting, well on the other side of a field goal. Steven, what do you see here in Washington and the Giants?
I have Washington minus 2.5 in my account. I made that bet, and it is because I am a big believer that when you have this many injuries on the offensive line, it just catapults your entire offense from being consistent. And I agree with Adam that I thought last week was more about some issues with Buffalo, and maybe we'll get to that in a little bit. I see a lot of similarities here to a team that we saw last year in the Los Angeles Rams, who were just a mash unit on their offensive line. And it took a while for the market to adjust to that reality, because Matthew Stafford was still the quarterback in a lot of those games. And I was firing bets against the Rams because I just didn't feel like, yes, Cooper Kupp wasn't there either, but I'm pretty sure the Giants this year don't have Cooper Kupp as well. So I don't think this is a viable offense with how hurt the offensive line is. I don't think they can move the ball. So I would be terrified to take a teaser leg out with them based on that. They can lose by double digits any given week. So I will absolutely take the commies here under a field goal, even though it is a divisional game on the road, which is typically not something you want to do. But yeah, I feel very comfortable with it just because I don't care if it's Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor. This is one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen.
Let's move on to a game in which it's, tons of speculation here for us guys. It is the Las Vegas Raiders and the Chicago Bears. This is another 2.5 and a 37.5 total in favor of the Raiders on the road over the Bears. We know Justin Fields not going to go. It sounds to me like this is kind of a multi-week injury for him. I'm speculating, but it seems like this is going to be 2 or 3 weeks for him. He can't grip the football, so we're going to get Tyler Badgett. And on the Raiders side, we're not going to get Jimmy Garoppolo, yet they have not decided whether it will be Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell. They said they will make that call after practice today. So, yeah, I know. So we can't really fully handicap this one to the extent we would like to do with all this. Steven, I mean, so many unknowns in this, so much garbage to try and deal with all of this. Maybe a lean to the under. I could see this game playing just absolutely terribly and it just being the most ridiculous thing we've ever watched. But these aren't the type of games I like to bet.
So let's stick with the theme here that Adam brought up, where this fits another potential Wong teaser. You have a home underdog at 2.5. You could tease up to 8.5 and a total of 37.5. But the idea of teasing and getting extra points is that you have confidence that the points you are getting are valuable. And I'm not sure how anybody could be confident completely that getting 6 extra points with Badgett or Bagent, I guess we'll find out this weekend. The pride of Shepherd University, right, in West Virginia. The guy who once got killed by the Colorado School of Mines is starting an NFL game this week. How could anybody feel confident that the 6 extra points they're getting there to pay minus 120 or shorter at a lot of books now is valuable? So I don't have a bet on this game, but I would just say, just based on the unknown, if you definitely want to bet this, just take the plus money on Chicago and the home dog against another backup quarterback on the other side and a head coach who has been terrible, who's made bad decisions over and over again in his NFL career. A dome team going on the road in colder weather and wind. Like, if you want to bet this game, just lean into that randomness and that variance and take some plus money as opposed to laying juice with a complete unknown on the teaser leg.
Adam, I heard people this week, because, you got to fill content, you got to fill air, talking about Tyler Badgett threw for 4,580 yards in his last year. So what are we like? Why are we just assuming he can't play? I'm like, he did this against the school that Steven just previously mentioned, Slippery Rock, East Stroudsburg, Bloomsburg, Westchester, Millersville, Lockhaven, Shippensburg.
Oh my God, that's my neck of the woods. I had high school friends that went to Bloomsburg and Shippensburg.
Edinburgh, Southern Connecticut State. How's Connecticut even big enough to have a Southern Connecticut State? That shouldn't even be a thing. And
was the Connecticut School of Broadcasting on the schedule too?
So people are trying to make a case for this guy because he threw for a lot of yards last year against a whole bunch of probably not even barely good enough to play on their senior football team, And so I don't know, man. I don't want to back the Raiders. But at least there's some sort of, if they go with Hoyer, at least. If they go with Aiden O'Connell, just absolutely throw this out the window to me. But at least with Hoyer, there's a proven commodity. We at least know what we're getting. We have a guy that is at least,
look at his face. Proven commodity, what? Brian Hoyer.
Yeah, yes, a guy that has a million snaps in the NFL over the course of 15 years.
Who hasn't won a game, and I can't remember how long.
As opposed to a guy that listen, he is going to get blitzed. They are about to blitz him at a 90% rate, and this is going to be we are about to see the highest blitz rate in the history of the NFL, because they are going to make this guy Badgett, who none of us had heard of until a week ago. Whatever.
You also called him Tyler 2 seconds ago.
Oh, listen, whatever. Tyson, Taylor, Tyler, whatever. Who cares? Who cares? He's gonna be bagging groceries in 2 weeks anyway. It doesn't even matter.
He number 12, he could be TB12.
Yeah, whatever. This is his audition for the XFL. It's what's going on to this week. But anyway, Adam, you follow this Raiders team. What do we think about a 2.5? Them laying 2.5 on the road.
All right. First of all, it's going to be O'Connell. Don't buy the noise on Brian Hoyer. They have this set up to where Hoyer comes in mid-game if they need him. Aiden O'Connell gets the full week start, and when you have Jimmy Garoppolo as your starting quarterback, you need to have these things planned out, and that's where the way that the Raiders have this set up right now. I want to talk about two things
because sure, sure, yeah.
So let's talk about this in the aggregate, right? Let's talk about where we are right now with Las Vegas and Chicago both throwing backup quarterbacks out there. Whether it's a backup or whether it's an injured quarterback, there are 10 teams this week that either are on a backup or are throwing an injured starter out there. And if you want to get involved in trying to handicap injured starters and backups, God bless you, because you have a lot more confidence in these situations than I do. Now, I have one fade coming up later with a backup quarterback in which I feel good about. But other than that, in general, what have we gotten this year trying to figure out quarterback injuries? We didn't know Derek Carr's shoulder was going to be busted and come into a game in which we thought Jameis Winston was going to start. We've had no idea what to do with Joe Burrow throughout the entire season. We saw the Jacksonville-New Orleans line bounce around all week this week based on Trevor Lawrence isn't going, Trevor Lawrence is going, Trevor Lawrence is hurt, but he's playing, Trevor Lawrence can't run. Oh, yeah, Trevor Lawrence led the Jaguars in rushing last night. If you want to try to figure these things out,
his sprained knee really mattered whenever he ran for 59 yards.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So here's the only way I'm going to tell you to potentially get involved in this game. If you pay attention to the Raiders, then you heard Davante Adams this week talking about how he's not getting the football and how, we just won the last 2 games, but the offense is not working the way it's intended if I'm not getting the football. It's very tempting to just stick the diva wide receiver label on him, and I think you would be completely wrong because Davante Adams is the canary in the coal mine for a Raiders offense that still has not scored 20 points through 6 games this year. The only way they got to 21 last week was because Mac Jones safetied them into it at the end of the game.
That my +3 is well aware.
We're all
aware. Oof. That's
+3.
It's a little painful.
Well aware.
It's a little painful. look to Davante Adams props. Seriously, they're going to force feed him the ball this week to try to make him happier. I know that's very narrative-y driven, but there are multiple places you can look that's already happened this year. Happened with A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. We saw it with DJ Moore's targets pick up after he wasn't getting the ball for a while. Jamar Chase said he was always open. Turned out he went 9 for 180 in the next week. Play Davante Adams overs.
In the other Aiden O'Connell game, Adams had 13 targets, 8 for 75. So maybe I think receptions is what I'd be most into with the back.
We've got it's a squeaky wheel narrative for these wide receiver ones actually plays out sometimes because you can force targets to wide receiver ones, and so it's not just it's not like a completely unknown thing to happen in the NFL. Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots, 8.5. There are a couple of flat 8s now out there in favor of the Bills on the road over the Patriots. 40.5 is your total. 40.5, both of those out there. So, Adam, I look at this and I
can feel where you're going already.
Look, I look at this and it's like 8.5 is probably too many points, and it's like, my rational mind should probably try to get myself to either a Patriots or pass ticket. But I hate this offense so much, and I hate Mac Jones at quarterback so much, and the lack of talent in playmakers is so evident. And now on the defensive side of the ball, kind of beaten up a little bit more over there as well. I end up landing on an under. Now, the number is different from when I got it earlier in the week. I still think it's under or pass for me. If I don't think that the team can score really at all, if I think Buffalo is kind of mildly broken, and by the way, it's starting to come to roost by this whole me worried about them not having a second target on that team, because they do not have a second option, and outside of Steph Diggs, whenever they really need anything done, they can't get anything done. And I think this is a real concern for this Bills team. And wouldn't they like to be able to call up the Raiders and see if they could acquire Davante Adams? But that's neither here nor there. Adam, 40.5, 8.5, Bills on the road at the Patriots.
Everything in me says take the Patriots, and I can't get there. And it's the same as what I told you guys last week. I said it here on the podcast last week and said it should be Jets for me, right? Like, it absolutely should be Jets. I loved what it looked like in that spot. Would have been right. Didn't have the guts to do it. And I definitely don't have the guts to do it with Mac Jones this week. Let me read you a few more stats. Desmond Ridder, I told you, 14 turnover-worthy plays total. You know who else has 14 turnover-worthy plays? Mac Jones. They have almost the same amount of interceptions. They have almost the same amount of touchdowns. They have the exact same completion percentage on the year. And so Mac Jones is very, very, very live to throw 1 pick six, to throw 2, to throw 3, to throw 4, because that's how many pick sixes he's thrown so far this year. He's already thrown 4 pick sixes. And if you want to go ahead and screw up either an under or taking a lot of points with a bad offense, then that's exactly how you do it. So how about this, Matt? Why don't we peg this as a live bet game where after a quarter or so, if it really feels like the Buffalo offense is that stuck, if it's that bad, then maybe then I can get to taking the points with New England or taking an under, but I can't do it pregame.
Steven, the losses, I think, of Gonzo and Judon started to kind of show up a little bit. So we look at these advanced stats and we see, hey, this team's really actually pretty good on defense. But we kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, because now we're about to see what they're truly made of without 2 superstars out there. When I say super, listen, like Christian Gonzalez in his short time he's out there looking like he was the absolute real deal. We know Judon is one of the very best at that position in all of the NFL. So you look and you see, like, well, their rush defense success rate's second against. Like, that's amazing. Rush defense DVOA is 8th, and like pass defense, they're kind of middle of the pack. It's not that big of a deal. Well, maybe it is a big deal.
I agree. And on top of that, they have a quarterback now who's playing worse than Zach Wilson in a lot of ways, if you look at the advanced statistics, most notably completion percentage over expected. So, and when he does throw a dime when he needs it most, his receiver drops it last week, 1 play before that safety, the irony, right? So I think they have a quarterback worse than Zach Wilson at this point in a lot of ways. And I think they have a defense that's nowhere good as the Jets. Like, this is a bottom 5 team in the NFL, the New England Patriots. And I want to bet them to cover this spread so badly because I think Josh Allen's hurt. If you look at his ADOT first half versus second half against the Giants, it was like 10 versus 4.5 or something like that. It was just, he was hurt and he wasn't throwing deep anymore. So I don't think he's fully healthy. I think he's gutting it out. I think their defense and their passing defense is still very injured. And that's, you saw Darius Slayton burning them on the outside last week. So I'm looking for spots to fade the Bills as a big favorite, but not with this team. I'm good. So I actually went the other way and took a bit of a risk based on how I feel about this Buffalo team. But I just think the Patriots are so bad that I just tease the Bills down through 7-3, and I'm good with that. And if I lose, so be it. Win game, maybe something weird will happen, but I just don't think Mac Jones can go win a game right now. And I'm sure Adam's going to hop in and say that's risky with what we know about Buffalo right now.
No, it's really not. Look, I can't argue with looking at this game and teasing down. I will tell you overall, teasing up has been better than teasing down thus far this year. But again, small sample size, caveats apply to all of these things. The one thing I would point out is that we talked a lot about New England's defense and Buffalo's offense, and we didn't talk about just how beaten up this Buffalo defense is, and the fact that they've already, for the season, lost their top playmakers at all 3 levels, and now Ed Oliver's not playing this week. If ever New England was going to be able to muck it up and play a 14-10 kind of game and just run the ball over and over again, this would be the game, because remember, before Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka lost their minds on the last couple of plays of the game, they were running the ball all over Buffalo in the second half. Like, Saquon Barkley was horrible in the first half, and then the holes started to open up as the game went on. New England might be able to do that. Ramondre Stevenson is trending back toward in on the injury report this week. So, just things to think about, but I can't play it.
Matt, last thing. This is not the week for it, but after this week, we assume Buffalo gets this win. Let's look at this Bills future schedule and see, like, are there negative outcome futures that we want to consider with Buffalo, considering where they're at? Because we could probably get some really good prices. They're still being rated easily as a top 5, maybe top 4-3 team right now. So if you want to fade them the rest of the way, I think we can get some good prices on them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, the last half of the schedule is certainly much tougher than the first half of the schedule for this team, for sure. You got games against Cincinnati. You got games against Philly. You got the Chiefs. You got the Cowboys. We don't know what version of the Chargers you'll get late in the season, but you do have the Chargers on there, and then closing out the season on the road at the Dolphins. Not going to be easy sledding for the Buffalo Bills. That is definitely for sure, and certainly if they continue to play like they're playing right now. Cleveland Browns and the Indianapolis Colts. This is now out to 3.5, 40.5 is your total again. It's just the total of the week that we've got going with all these. So I played the Browns at 2, guys. I might come back in now on the other side of 3 and try and just middle this thing at 3. I'll be just full transparency since I can't get this thing now on the other side of 3. My thought is I wanted to take it at 2 on the off chance that Deshaun Watson was going to be back, and then I would probably get the line movement to be able to try to get this thing on the 3. That has played out at this point. Deshaun Watson, official list is questionable, was out there practicing today. We know he mouthed to the crowd at the end of last week, see you soon, whatever the hell that means, and whatever. More than anything, Steven, this is not a handicap about who even plays quarterback for the Browns for me. The reason I felt comfortable playing the Browns, even if he wasn't going to play while I was fine with taking the 2 anyway, is the fact that we saw last week what happens when Gardner Minshew is pressured a lot. And one thing we know about Cleveland, they live in the backfield. This defense lives in the backfield. He is going to get pressured, and he's going to get pressured a ton. And Gardner Minshew is a lifelong journeyman backup for a reason. And he wets the bed whenever he gets a ton of pressure on him. He's going to throw the ball to the Cleveland Browns a couple of different times in this game. And getting it at this number, I think is worth at least a small look on the Brown side, because I don't know how the Colts consistently move the ball up and down the field and score against this Browns defense.
I agree with you. This was a midweek play that I shared in the lines.com Discord. Free to join, top right-hand corner of the homepage. You can find the link to go in there. And we bet Cleveland minus 2.5. In the middle of the week when we first got the initial optimism that Deshaun Watson might be back this week. I agree with everything you're saying about Gardner Minshew. Adam, I want to ask you, if you have your numbers in front of you, what do you make this spread? And if you don't have them in front of you, just, if you had a best guess.
Without an adjustment for Deshaun Watson, which I have to be honest, for me is probably a point at most. Mm-hmm. I make it Cleveland 2. I would probably be comfortable going to Cleveland 3 based on Gardner Minshew, but I don't make it beyond that.
Yeah, so that's interesting to me because there is a common data point here. And listen, markets adjust, team ratings change, but for what it's worth, there's a common data point here with Gardner Minshew playing the Ravens and Deshaun Watson playing the Ravens this year. And if you look at those closing spreads, you get Cleveland -5 or 5.5 on a neutral. If you were to give the Colts 2 points for home field advantage, you would get Cleveland -3.5 where we're at. I would not give the Colts 2 points of home field advantage. I think they have one of the worst home field advantages in the NFL. In fact, when I worked for the Colts, their head coach at the time, Chuck Pagano, straight up told me he thought they had one of the worst home field advantages in the NFL. There's just, when you're on the field there, the noise is not all that restrictive to a road team. So that's very different. I was curious because that's very different from what you just said, Adam. And I think that's just because we have a muddled quarterback situation on both sides here. But with how good the Cleveland defense is, and I'm not giving them all the credit in the world against the 49ers last week when they had a ton of injuries and a big wind game, but I think it's fair to say now that this is one of the elite defenses in the NFL. I'm just not sure they're the best, but against this matchup against Gardner Minshew, I'm perfectly happy laying under a field goal here with Cleveland.
So, Adam, for me, if I knew we had a healthy Deshaun Watson, I actually had this 4.5 in favor of Cleveland, even on the road. So but obviously, given what we know, I think the line is 3.5. I would still think that it's playable for me, given all the stuff that's kind of going on.
Is it fair to say we all think Deshaun Watson isn't some amazing quarterback, but maybe it's just about the fact that PJ Walker is like brutally bad?
Yeah. Oh, I rewatched that game, and it was a brutal performance. I mean, it was absolutely horrific watching what PJ Walker did. Now, that said, that is a different defense than what he gets this week in the Colts, should it be him, right? So there is that. Adam, what do you see here in Browns and Colts?
So I see where you're coming from with the 4.5 and making the adjustment for a healthy Deshaun Watson.
They're going with Brian. They're going with Brian Hoyer. It is not going to be Aiden O'Connell. So it is. It is Brian Hoyer for the Raiders this week. So if that changes your handicap at all,
unbelievable. This organization is such a joke. This organization is such an absolute joke. This is Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler trying to save their jobs because they happen to have fluked their way into 3-3, and they want to be able to point to the fact that they somehow got to 4-3 near midseason because Brian Hoyer gives them a better chance to win this game this week. That is garbage. This team has no chance to go anywhere or do anything. They are fooling themselves. Davante Adams has it right, and everybody else, including Josh freaking McDaniels, has it wrong.
And guess what? I'm glad we're on this game because another coming through. Deshaun Watson expected to start at Indy. Okay. So there it is. So Deshaun Watson expected to start.
So to me, I understand where your rating comes from on that, Matt. I think there's a couple things. First of all, I'm a little higher on the Indianapolis defense, I think, than most are. I see it pretty close to a top 10 defense in what they've been able to do so far this year, despite the fact that I don't know that it's a talent-rich defense by any stretch of the imagination. They got put in some really, really bad spots last week by Gardner Minshew and by the turnovers, right? Don't be fooled by what Jacksonville did in terms of the points last week because a lot of that was Gardner Minshew. And that, to me, is where we have to get to when it comes to handicapping this game because Gardner Minshew, the starter, by the numbers, is a hell of a lot different than Gardner Minshew, the backup. Let's go to the PFF numbers for this year. Last week, Gardner Minshew had 7 turnover-worthy plays. Do you know how hard it is to have that in one game? In one game.
Trevor Siemian, eat your heart out.
7 of his 55 attempts were turnover-worthy plays. The other game he started against Baltimore, he had 3 of them. All 10 of his turnover-worthy plays have come in the 2 games that he started. None in the games in which he came in relief of Anthony Richardson. In the games that he came in relief of Anthony Richardson, the yards per attempt, 7.4 and 11.1. Interesting. So when teams had to game plan for a running quarterback, it went a lot differently than when teams had to game plan for Gardner Minshew. Well, when teams had to game plan for Gardner Minshew, yards per attempt 5, yards per attempt 6, and he was awful in both of those games. So here's the way I want to get after this game, because I don't trust that Deshaun Watson is healthy, and what I just said a few minutes ago about trying to handicap injured quarterbacks, I want to take Deshaun Watson and the Browns out of this entirely. This Cleveland defense isn't as far ahead of everyone as the Miami offense is ahead of everyone, but it's pretty far ahead of San Francisco by non-garbage time EPA as one of the best defenses that we have seen in a long time. The Indianapolis team total right now is 18.5. I do not see Indianapolis getting to 18.5 points against this Cleveland defense when we just saw what they did to the San Francisco 49ers, when we've seen what they have been able to do to just about everybody this year. So under Indianapolis team total 18.5.
Matt, final note for me. Me betting Cleveland minus 2.5 was not some uber confident bet that they're just amazingly better than the Colts and can cover this on the road. Yeah. It was really a numbers play getting ahead of Deshaun Watson movement. So
same for me.
If this gets to 4.5 on Sunday, I may just middle this and say that to hell with this game and try and middle a number with a low total.
Pittsburgh Steelers and the Los Angeles Rams. It is an expensive 3 in favor of the Rams at home over the Steelers. 43.5 is your total. So, Adam, the Steelers coming out of a bye. We know what they have looked like on the offensive side of the ball so far this year. It has not been good. Every now and then flashes a little bit of Pickett to Pickens, but that is about it. Did they find anything? I'm looking at the injury report right now. They were optimistic Pat Freiermuth was going to be back, and he is not. So he is officially out for them. But they do get Deontay Johnson back. So that obviously could, in theory, help this offense. We don't know because we don't know if Kenny Pickett can actually do anything at the quarterback position in the NFL. At first blush, I wanted to come in on the Rams, and then I pumped the brake, kind of at least considering the fact that getting Johnson back in there, maybe he now, with Pickens not having to be the number one, you bring back in Johnson who can be that number one, and then Pickens might actually get to run a little bit more freely. Maybe that opens up. Maybe it's easier throws for Pickett, which can make his job a little bit easier. So I pumped the brakes. I don't have anything in the account on this one. At first blush, I wanted to go Rams, but then I was like, coming out of a bye, a healthy wide receiver 1, maybe we see a different version of the Steelers.
Okay. I can't get there. And here's why. Because to me, thinking that way about Deontay Johnson especially is kind of coaching your bet a little bit, because you're asking Matt Canada as offensive coordinator to effectively reincorporate him into the game plan, and we've seen pretty consistently that Pittsburgh's game plans don't seem to reflect the talent that they have at any given time. And so for me, this is Rams -3, and here's why. I can look at 4 different units, right? 2 offenses and 2 defenses, and I can tell you that by non-garbage time EPA, there is 1 elite unit in this game, and it has actually been a truly elite unit throughout the season. The Los Angeles Rams are 4th in offensive EPA outside of garbage time. 4th! And Puka Nacua didn't suffer last week. He did not suffer at all with Cooper Kupp coming back into the lineup. Like, this is going to be a spot for the Rams offensively to continue to do what they do, and I don't really worry that much about Pittsburgh figuring it out offensively. And here's the other piece of this equation. The one name that you did not mention on the injury report is the single most important name that you could mention for Pittsburgh, and he only popped up yesterday with a heel problem, and that's TJ Watt. TJ Watt was not on the injury report on Wednesday, and that heel problem was something that he injured in practice on Thursday. And so the Pittsburgh defense without TJ Watt is okay. All right.
TJ Watt has been removed from the injury report.
Okay. Well, it was bad enough to be a DNP on Thursday, so it's at least something to give me pause about what the health is of TJ Watt, and we know that's how the Steelers have been winning games, is by causing havoc with their defense. So anyway, the long and short of it is the handicap comes down to I want to be betting on an elite offense, and the Rams have been that thus far in terms of their production in the passing game.
So, Steven, you and I talked a little bit on the Survivor Pod this week about just some of the stuff that we were thinking from a general standpoint. And, one of the things we're talking about, comeback player of the year, we're sitting here, DeMar Hamlin, minus 150, Tua Tagovailoa, plus 240, but then Cooper Kupp still sitting out there at 15-1. If this Rams offense continues to hum, if DeMar Hamlin continues to be inactive on NFL Game Day Sundays, and Tua wins the MVP, like they're not going to give him comeback player of the year and MVP, then the next guy on the list is Cooper Kupp, right? I mean, and like if the Rams continue to kind of play the way that they're playing, it's at least an interesting bet to put in your account anyway. I wanted to at least tangentially mention that because that was something we had talked about in case people don't follow that side of everything. I'll let you elaborate on that a little bit, and then we can go into your thoughts on this game.
I'm glad you mentioned that because a couple of weeks ago, I shared Cooper Kupp 80-1 to win comeback player of the year in the TheLines.com Discord. I don't think Tua is an appropriate second choice in that market because, first of all, I think he's more likely to win MVP at this point. And secondly, I'm not sure he missed enough games last year to really be a comeback candidate in voters' minds. It could just be Hamlin still, and that's that. If it's not, I have three guys circled that it might be. One is Kupp. If he gets injured again, I think Stafford probably passes him as the Rams candidate if they make the playoffs. And I still think Baker Mayfield, even though he's regressing a little bit, I still think he's in the mix. Let's not forget Geno Smith lost a lot of games last year and still won comeback player of the year. So I'm not sure Baker's dead in that category. As far as the handicap for this game, I agree with a lot of what Adam said. I want to be bullish on this Rams offense. The reason I haven't pressed the button yet is just one caveat of the offense in this particular matchup against TJ Watt and company, that Matthew Stafford this year has the number 30 catchable pass rate in the league when pressured. That's my concern here. And I'm not sure this is a great matchup in that regard. And getting a full 3 when you don't have a real home field advantage also concerns me a little bit.
I would want to know, by the way, if I were going to base my handicap on that stat, I would want to know how it adjusted last week with Cooper Kupp back
very
in
fair
the lineup
very
versus the first 4 weeks.
The other thing about this, just to play devil's advocate here, on the Steelers side of things, I wonder, just because the only dude, and we always talk about dudes here on the podcast, the only dude on the Rams defense, which don't get me wrong, they are playing spectacularly well considering the talent level that they have on that defense. But the only dude they have is Aaron Donald. Could that actually scare Matt Canada into calling more efficient plays? Yeah, could he be sitting there going, you know what? I could run Najee Harris into the line for 1.5 yards, or I could just avoid Aaron Donald and throw the ball more.
Don't assume Matt Canada is going to do
anything. I've heard that suggested. Yeah, right. I mean, I have actually heard that suggested in smart places this week. But again, I can't coach Matt Canada, and if I could, I'd have won a lot of money by now.
Yeah, this is all true. Just something, devil's advocating here on all of this. Arizona Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks. This is down to 7.5 in favor of the Seahawks. 44.5 is the total. This I thought was heading to 9 and instead went the other direction, and Cardinals started taking money. Steven, look, I think this is like one of the better teaser legs of the season so far with Seattle. I look and I know that the injury report was a little concerning for them. Coming out of Thursday, there were a couple of different guys. Zach Charbonnet, DNP. Evan Brown was a DNP. DK Metcalf was a DNP. So you don't want to see that. But DK Metcalf's already said he's going to play. So we'll take it for that. They've got a ton of running backs. So whether Zach Charbonnet plays or not, it doesn't really matter. So I don't know. Maybe it was the injury report. Maybe it's just people thought that 8.5 was too much for this Seattle team.
Well, if we're going to talk about the Giants' offensive line concerns, we at least need to note what's going on with the Seahawks' offensive line. They have a lot, basically their entire offensive line is dinged up, may or may not play this week. So I think to feel really good about the teaser leg, I at least want to see the majority of the Seahawks offensive line is going to be out there. I heard a lot of smart people this week bring up the notion that when the Seahawks offensive line has been healthy, it's allowed them to go one tight end, 3 wide receivers a lot more often than when it hasn't been healthy, which has forced them to bring in an extra tight end and to help with blocking. And that's made them more conservative, less explosive, etc. So that makes sense to me. Certainly makes sense. So I do have the teaser leg. I'd feel a heck of a lot better about it if I knew what the status was of this offensive line.
Yeah, I have the teaser leg as well. If I get proven wrong, I get proven wrong. I look at it this way. Even with a banged-up offensive line, it seems to me like the Seahawks should be able to find a way to win this thing by 2 points. It's this Cardinals squad. It was like a feel-good story there, Adam. They were like, yeah, they were plucky at the beginning of halves and things and whatever, but it's still equaled a bunch of losses. Yeah, I mean, the one no-show by the Cowboys, but outside of that, I mean, all this stuff's like, oh, man, they're in the game. They still end up losing the games, right? I mean, they still lost. And even if it looks like we're probably only going to be down one of these offensive linemen if what we see kind of like rings true here. So if that's the case, not the worst thing in the world for Seattle. And I don't know. I just can't downgrade them to a point where I can't see them covering a teaser leg. I don't want to lay the 7.5, I don't think, with given all that, but like I can't downgrade them enough to where I wouldn't say, no, man, 1.5 on a teaser leg. I feel pretty good about that against this Cardinals team that pretty much has now regressed to where we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season, which is, hey, they're probably going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And I think that they are.
I don't know that they have regressed to the point that we thought they were going to be preseason, which was, oh my God, this team is tanking. They're going to be 0-17, right? I do think that they have settled back into a spot where if you're going to play them, you're probably going to play them first half before things start to wear down on them, right? They seem to be a team that comes out pretty hot. Like Drew Petzing seems to have them moving early in the game. It's just that they don't really sustain it throughout. I can't argue with you on the teaser leg. There are a lot of injury. I mean, Tyler Lockett's limited. DK Metcalf's a DNP. Like there's enough here that I don't really want to be part of this game. So I'm going to pass.
It seems also at first blush to me that this could be an over situation, but the injury report I think would need to go the right way for me to come in on that side. Like I think Seattle can easily go for high 20s, low 30s in this against the Cardinals defense, which is absolutely putrid in every level and every single thing that they do. But I'm going to have to wait on an injury report for me to feel a little bit more comfortable in that. So we'll see what happens on Sunday mornings, and follow me on the Twitter machine. I put out any last minute stuff on there as well.
By the way, keep an eye out starting next week for Kyler Murray, right? Now that he's back to practicing, like if you're going to look ahead at all at Arizona, realize that you're going to get at least a functional quarterback because Kyler Murray could come back as soon as next week.
Glad you brought that up because I did bet Cardinals plus 7.5 hosting the Ravens next week because I'm already fading the Ravens overall. I think they might lose this week. And if it's Kyler, it's not 7.5, right? So I'm just playing a number there, and we'll see.
Los Angeles Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Hey, finally a good game, guys. So finally a good game, or is it? 5.5 in favor of the Chiefs at home. 48 is your total. Boys, this is in my account. I have this Chiefs by a full touchdown. I actually can get to Chiefs on the other side of 7 if I really kind of start to adjust a little bit more. The play calling for the Chargers is atrocious. Staley can't get the defense to play. What can we say about it? There's nothing more we can say about this team, Steven. Like there's nothing more we can say. They're the most underperforming team of the last 3 seasons in the NFL, hands down. I don't want to hear about the injuries. I don't want to hear about whatever. Every team deals with injuries, and yet somehow the Chargers are the only one that can never figure out how to overcome them and actually do anything with all the rest of the talent that they have. I think this number is too short. I think the Chiefs could end up making this thing pretty gross on the Chargers. So this one in the account for the Chiefs.
How do you really feel?
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to Adam here because I saw him nodding his head and giving a thumbs up here, and it sounds like he's in lockstep with you.
Strongest confidence play of the week on Kansas City -5.5, which is where it's been sitting for a while. Here's why. Everything that someone is going to tell you about why to play the Chargers is narrative garbage. They're going to tell you, oh, but the Chargers have played the Chiefs really well. And every time, no matter how close these teams are, they always play to 3-point. Yeah, okay. And now tell me what the two teams on the field are doing this year here right now. Because Kansas City isn't really impressing anyone offensively, right? Okay, big surprise. The only game they haven't won is the game they played against the Detroit team that all of us think is at the minimum a top 8 team in the league without Travis Kelce and because of a fluky bounce on a throw to Kadarius Toney, or else they win that game too. I texted Matt during the Monday Night Football game when I was trying to suffer through watching Mike McCarthy and Brandon Staley out-derp each other down the field, and I said, JFC, fire them both. I can't stand watching either of these teams. It's absolutely painful watching the Chargers find different ways to screw up every game. And so I haven't even gotten to talking about the Chiefs defense, right? I could talk about the Chiefs defense. There are people out there who think this is a top 3, top 4 defense right here and now, and I'm not going to argue with any of them with the way that they're playing. And let me add one more stat to why I feel as confident as I do, and I'm going to give full credit for this one to Drew Dinsick. If you are someone who follows the Deep Dive pod, he went back and looked at teams that have 10 or more days of rest against teams that have 6 or less, right? So essentially you've got the Chargers coming off a Monday night game, and you've got the Chiefs coming off the mini-bye. Back to 2013, against the spread, the teams with the rest advantage in those games are 16-6-2. That is the kind of trend, maybe the one and only trend, that I can actually give a little bit of credence to, because net rest edge is something that has been proven out over time.
Yeah, that's not a team-specific thing. That's not a coach-specific thing. That's not whatever. That's what we're talking about.
That's a human biology.
Right, like everyone knows, oh, you just say every trend's... No, I'm like, no, 99% of trends are garbage. There are some that play out, and those that are not team-specific, and they're not coach-specific, they're not player, personnel-specific, that is like that's just a fact, actually. Our bodies are better off, like, with more rest, whatever. So, Steven, I think you were kind of agreeing with us here. I don't see a lot of Chargers love on this pod for us.
Yeah, it's not the Chargers for me either. It would only be Kansas City, and you guys are really convincing me. I mean, I might pull out the phone after we're done here and add Kansas City, because you both made very compelling cases. I'll just look at the resume of what the Chiefs have done this year. 17 points scored against Jacksonville on the road, covered the spread. Kicked the crap out of Chicago, covered the spread. Would have covered the spread still, despite a horrible game by Mahomes at the Jets, if he decided to go in the end zone and said he took a knee. Jets probably still right side there, but very easily could have covered the spread there. Minnesota, despite a ton of Vikings steam, getting that down to 3.5. Chiefs scored 27 and cover the spread. Last week, they only scored 19 points, covered the spread entirely, except for one spot I could find where it did tick up to 11. So, despite Mahomes and the offense still trying to find their way a little bit, this is the best defense we may have seen of this Mahomes-Andy Reid era. And it is just raising the floor for them on a weekly basis more than we've seen in the past few years. So,
and they acquired a weapon this week, boys. Mecole Hardman coming back into the fold. I mean,
yeah, whatever. But
watch Mecole Hardman have like 800 yards to like close out the season or something, just because there's nobody else to throw.
They
to.
loved him so much they let him walk where they could have had him for 1 year, $4 million.
Yeah, so it's.
But, I mean, it can't get worse, right? I mean,
no, it can't get worse. Yeah, we'll see.
But yeah, I agree with you, and I think the rest edge on top of everything is the cherry on top. So I'm with you. I'm with you guys.
Green Bay Packers and the Denver Broncos. This is 1.5 in favor of the Packers on the road at the Broncos. 45 is your total. Adam, it's a game that's going to happen. It's like, I got to admit, man, maybe I'm just more bummed than anything else just about this game, because like, I kind of wanted the Broncos to be a little better because I wanted that division to be a little more interesting. I kind of wanted Jordan Love to be okay to make that division a little more interesting. Like I think it's more I have no allegiance to the Broncos. I have no allegiance to the Packers. I'm not a fan of Russell Wilson or of Jordan Love or any of these guys. It's just kind of like to make the league better as a whole. I kind of wanted the Broncos to be a game on the schedule to where we could say like, but the Broncos, whatever. And then the Packers be like, Jordan Love, he sat, but look, he learned, and this is what happens. Not the case. So here we have the Packers as a favored team on the road against the Broncos. And I look at this and I just laugh because I'm like, I could make a case why I should back the Packers here. I could make a case why I should back the Broncos here. And every time I do that, I just go, I'm going to scratch the damn game off then. Like, I'm not going to play it. Let me get your opinion first on this, and then we can circle back around and try to at least talk some sense into this thing.
I have a friend who is, I'm not going to say new to betting. He's not new to betting by any stretch of the imagination, but he's just kind of getting back into it after having been away from looking at the NFL for a number of years. And he came to me and he asked me what I thought about the Packers against the Raiders in that Monday night game as a teaser leg. And I said, yeah, I can get there as a teaser leg. I said, and I know this is going to sound like I'm making this up coming from the past, but he's got the text. I can prove it. I said, there is a 3-interception game hiding in there somewhere for Jordan Love. I don't think the Raiders are the team to bring it out. Turns out the Raiders were the team to bring it out. Jordan Love was horrible in that game. That game was right there for the Packers to win. And Jordan Love made so many unforced errors that I can't get there in backing Green Bay in this game, despite the fact that Denver's defense is every bit as bad as we have seen for the first few weeks. I don't think that's any mirage at all that Denver's defense really is this bad. And for as much as we've talked about, the offense is plucky, non-garbage time EPA on offense, they're 24th. There's nothing to write home about here. There's nothing to feel good about on the Broncos side, and there's really not a lot to feel good about on the Packers side either. And I have the feeling that this is one of those games where if you go looking for an edge in this game, you're trying to talk yourself into that edge. It's not something that pops off the page at you. I don't even think there's a prop play that comes right off the page at you in this game. And so it's already a short week. We have games that we like a little bit better. This is one that I think you just exercise a little bit of discipline and say, you know what, I could, but I don't have to.
Yeah, if I would probably give a slight edge even as bad as he's played. I'd probably give a slight edge to Russell Wilson over Jordan Love. Like, at least Russ they've moved the ball at times between the 20s. They are one of these other teams that have just struggled mightily in the red zone and cannot punch it in the end zone whenever they get down there. But I'll leave it at this. It would be Broncos or pass for me. Like, if somebody said you have to play the game, it would be a Broncos or pass for me because, like you said, the defense is probably we've seen the worst of this defense, right? Like, it can't get worse. It's been one of the worst, if not the worst defense in the NFL. So it can't go any further down. It could probably only get a little bit better. And then Jordan Love, it doesn't seem to me, and maybe I'm being unfair because it is a small sample size, but he has been in the league. It's not like he's rookie straight out of college type thing. Like, he has been in the league. He just doesn't look like he has it. Like, I mean, you're talking about that 3-interception game. The pressure terrified him. Like Max Crosby terrified him, and it was like some of the worst decision making and stuff that you see from an NFL quarterback. And so, I guess if I was playing in a contest and I had to pick every week, and it was a pick 'em against the spread, I'd probably play the Broncos. It's just that would be the initial thought for me.
After going back and rewatching a little bit of that Philadelphia Jets game last week, and you'll see where I'm going around to here, I think I would take Zach Wilson before I would take Jordan Love, because what I saw from Zach Wilson last week was drop, foot in the ground, throw the ball, right? Mm-hmm. He seemed to have an idea where he wanted to go with the football. Look, he wasn't great. I'm not telling you Zach Wilson's a good quarterback, but Jordan Love, when he gets a little pressure or when he's not sure where the read is, the footwork is gone. He's just slinging it out there. And I talked about the fact that Matt LaFleur was giving him advantages by scheming guys open early in the season, right? Well, whatever that was doesn't seem to be the case, or Jordan Love isn't reading where the open guys are anymore. So, I think the only way you can get into this game, and I hear where you're coming from on Broncos or pass, I think it could be a sneaky over game. I think if you think it's a lot of turnovers, you're talking about a lot of short fields. If you think you're talking about two bad defenses, and you are, because Green Bay is 23rd by non-garbage time EPA on defense, then you're looking at some ability to push the ball down the field here. I think you could get into one of those games where it's a late chase game and you end up at something like 24-23, 27-23, and you get over.
Yeah, it is. One of the bonuses about us waiting a little bit later is we get these afternoon injury reports. And so Green Bay, it just came through. 10 people listed on their final injury report here. Devondre Campbell, the only one listed as doubtful, but 9 other listed as questionable, including Eldon Jenkins, Aaron Jones, Darnell Savage, Eric Stokes, Quay Walker, Jair Alexander. All of these guys listed as questionable.
Jenkins, Jones, Alexander are the 3 players that would make the biggest difference to this handicap for Green Bay.
Yeah, so it's an injury report game, unfortunately, fellas. And if you think it breaks poorly for the Packers, then you probably want to get in on Denver, because if this injury report goes south come 90 minutes before game time, this line is going to go the other way for sure. There's no doubt about that. All right, Adam, this is one we've been waiting to talk about all podcast long. Bunch of stinkers this week, but boy, Dolphins and Eagles, not one of them. Sunday Night Football as well. We get it as a standalone 2.5 in favor of the Eagles right now at home. It is becoming an expensive 2.5 at a couple of the books out there. Could be headed to 3. 51.5 is the total. Boy, what an interesting handicap. What an interesting breakdown. You have strength on strength. You have MVP, candidates all over the place. Offensive Player of the Year candidates all over the place. Really kind of an interesting, what is McDaniel going to do to combat what the Eagles defense does well, et cetera, et cetera. It's just really and truly just a fascinating game of two teams that are great, but great at different things, which makes the chess match even more cool.
I can't tell you a game this year, maybe in the last 2 or 3 years, where my handicap has swung all the way from one end of the pendulum to the other this week. And I'm fully willing to admit that, right? Like some people are like, yeah, I know. I just look at this game. I see what I believe. No, every dig that I have done has pulled me to one side or the other. And here's where I am in the middle. Here's where I ultimately landed on this. I landed at a Miami teaser. And I landed at Miami plus 8.5. And here's why. I don't need to tell you how great the Miami offense is. I told you last week. I gave you the numbers. Pick a number, and they are generational on offense. And so I feel great about that. Philadelphia hasn't looked right? Like, we know that Philadelphia has not looked right. But to sell on Philadelphia right now, you would be selling at the absolute bottom of the market after that loss last week. Jalen Hurts didn't look good against pressure. Miami's not going to put the kind of pressure on Jalen Hurts that the New York Jets put on Jalen Hurts. Here's where I land on the teaser for Miami. If you think Miami's going to win, great. I can't argue that. It is the most elite offense we have seen in a decade in the NFL, at the very least in a decade. But if Philadelphia is going to win, then we know what Philadelphia's script is for winning a game. They are going to try to get a lead on you, and they are going to try to boa constrict you to the end of the game, right? They're going to try to sit on you. They are not going to run the score out on you. It's just not what they're built to do. If they're going to beat you, they're going to beat you by getting the ball in the second half and running one of these 10-minute drives where they just pound the ball over and over again, which you can do. Miami's defense isn't great. But that, to me, leaves the door wide open to the back for Miami to be able to cover a teaser. I don't see this offense losing by more than 8.5. And I know you can go point to the Buffalo game if you want to point to a game in which you saw an offense be able to run it up on the Miami Dolphins. This Eagles team is a completely different team than the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills have the explosion to do that. The Philadelphia Eagles do not, and I'm going to be fascinated to hear where you're landing on this thing, Matt.
Yeah, honestly, it was an injury report game for me. I really wanted to play the Dolphins, and then this injury report is everything I didn't want to see. And so it comes through. This is only about 20 minutes ago, guys. So Jalen Ramsey was able to practice all week long, out. Not even questionable, not even whatever, out. Xavier Howard, questionable also. Nick Needham, who is a backup for them as a defensive back, also questionable for them. Then you look on the other side in the Eagles, in which I was like, oh boy, this injury report after yesterday, I'm like, boy, howdy, this is going to be the spot to come in on the Dolphins. Everybody's playing except for Bradley Roby. I mean, Lane Johnson off the report, Devon Smith off the report, Jalen Carter off the report, Dallas Goedert, Darius Slay, Eli Ricks, they're all off the report. They're not even listed as questionable. Like, they're literally no game status attached to all of them. It went as pure for the Eagles as humanly possible with how bad that report looked yesterday. And so it's tough for me. I think this is maybe a sit back and just enjoy some awesome football. And if for whatever reason maybe this thing starts slow, I might come in on an in-game over, because I do think at some point both of these teams are going to find their footing with each other. It might be a little bit more of a chess match early on, Adam, than even a little bit later, right? And so kind of a feeling out process, think heavyweight boxing match, something or whatever. And so if it starts out slow, I could see this thing dips into the mid-40s, low 40s, whatever, however it goes. Like, I could see myself coming in an in-game over. But with this injury report, God, I wanted to play the Dolphins so bad, and I just can't now.
So let's talk about the live betting, because I do think there's a definite approach to this game that you can take with live betting, with the spread being so close in this game to start with. If you think that this is a game that trends toward the high total, right? And it's come back a little bit, right? At 51.5, I think was the last that I saw on total, unless that's moved at all. But if you think this is going to be that game, Matt, do you have an updated number for me? No, I thought you had an updated number. Okay.
Yeah, no.
If you think it's going to be that game, then you're going to see scoring back and forth. And if you think that they're going to score early on script especially, and that's where we've seen the Eagles offense be better, is early on script, there are going to be plus money opportunities on the money line on both teams here. You're going to be able to create yourself a nice little base from which to work, at which you might at some point in this game, if you're able to jump it correctly, if the game plays out the way you want it to, there might be plus 150, plus 175 on both sides of this at various points throughout the game. Maybe not even that good on both sides, but I do think you can create a plus money situation and then maybe work with something later depending on how you see things starting to play out. Like you said, maybe it's an in-game over if things start out slowly. But I do think if you start to see them start out fast especially, you're going to have a chance to do better betting this game live than pregame.
And listen, I don't want to ever bet against Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill. But as you mentioned, Adam, I think in conjunction, if you're on the Eagles side of this game, like you said, it's different with the Eagles than it would be in most scenarios. Like most scenarios, if you wanted to bet an over on a wide receiver, you'd probably want them to get down. Like it's actually a good thing for you where they have to abandon the run after. But the way the Eagles like take the air out of the ball and the way that they go about things and the way that they handle business when they're up, Tyreek's number is 96.5. Like that is as high a receiving prop as you will see. Like, and so could he get there early? Of course he could get there early. Like, I mean, it's Tyreek Hill, right? He needs 2 catches to get to that. But if you just go traditional thinking, if you're leaning towards the Eagles and you think the Eagles are kind of going to handle business against this Dolphins defense, Tyreek getting to 100 yards is going to be fairly tough because there might not be enough downs and enough opportunity for him to get there.
So here's how I think you have to play that part of the handicap. A lot of what the Eagles do well to slow down the pass, they do with their pass rush, and they do without having to blitz, and they do with getting all of those front 4 or 5 guys home. That's hard to do against Tua Tagovailoa and how quickly Mike McDaniel gets the ball out of his hands. So it's this strange kind of handicap, and we don't have a lot of these, but it's Eagles under, right? Like it's favorite under in this game. You cannot think that the Eagles are going to score with Miami and win. No way, no how, no chance is that going to happen. If you think that this is an over, you probably think that it's Miami, because I can't see the Eagles winning a 30-27 kind of game. That to me feels way more like a Miami script.
Jalen Hurts, and I'll let everybody out of here on this, but Jalen Hurts passing prop is 255.5 yards. And I'm going to go with this again, but it's the Miami defense. If the Eagles try to do the whole path of least resistance thing, the Miami defense, specifically on the run defense, has been pretty poor so far this year. Like there are teams that have been able to run the ball pretty effectively against them, and so you look at that and I don't know if there's a world that exists in which the Eagles have control of this game and they have control of the line of scrimmage, and also Jalen Hurts throws for 256 yards in the game. So I don't know if there is a path to that either. So something to kind of keep in play. That plays more of a, right at 200 type passing yardage game where they're running for another 140 between him and Swift and whoever else they decide to get some carries in this game. And so just trying to kind of do the whole game script, play it out through bets thing.
Well, play that out, and all you have to do to play it out is look at last week. Last week they had to put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands in order to try to win that game, and Jalen Hurts broke down. Right? That you can't say that the Jets caused all of that. Jalen Hurts had some bad passes in that game last week. And if we get Miami into a game state where you can go ears pinned back and go after Jalen Hurts, can Jalen Hurts beat you with his arm in that game? That's something we haven't seen out of Miami. Out of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep. I think so. I think maybe even two paths to victory there for that one on the under 255.5 for Jalen Hurts. But a fascinating game nonetheless. Cannot wait to see this one, guys. Of course, everything we do at The Line's absolutely free, so do appreciate the support. If you want to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, we're getting all kinds of stuff up here on the YouTube channel, so be sure and take advantage of all of that. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know in the comment section. I mean, what do you think of this game? I mean, the Dolphins, Eagles, both teams we think that are going to be there at the end without catastrophic injuries, and so getting it this early in the season is going to be a real treat for all of us here. So upper right-hand corner, lines.com. That's the Discord. You can go in there. You can chat this thing all the way up to kickoff. For Adam, I am Matt. Good luck on all your Week 7 bets.